You're watching a First Coast News special presentation, Voice to Vote, sponsored by Farah and Farah.
Their lives were centered on struggling for the right that we now have to vote.
Your voice is your vote, and your vote is your voice. Americans who came before us spent decades fighting just for us to have a say in our country's leadership. And now is the time to make our voices heard.
And change starts at the local level. We're talking about our city commissioners, our judges, our school superintendents, and our sheriffs.
And on primary election day, we'll decide who gets to make the decisions that impact our daily lives.
We also get to decide who represents the First Coast in Washington, with several U.S. representative seats up to us, the voters.
Exercise your right to vote and make that change, or be silent because you did not participate.
This is our time to make our voices heard.
And since your voice is your vote matters. We want to welcome you to Voice to Vote. I'm Baptiste.
And I'm Alex Livingston. Thank you so much for joining us.
Now, hey, I've got to be real with you up front. This is not your typical election special. We're not just going to throw a whole bunch of numbers at you because, let's face it, elections, they can be quite confusing all on their own, right?
Definitely. Well, one thing that we've both heard people say, and this might even sound familiar to you, is that they tend to think that their one vote won't make a difference. And I'm going to admit to you all out there that I've thought that myself too.
Yes, I think I've heard you say that before, but here's the problem with that. If you think that, I think that,
right,
and then our neighbor thinks that, and 100 of other people think that, well, now you have a problem because they're now going to think that that one thought, that one vote can turn into hundreds and thousands. So tonight, we're going to get you caught up on everything you need to know, like how to register to vote, how to vote by mail, and we're even going to dive into the history of voting.
It's going to be a really great night, you guys, and if there's one thing that we want you all to take from this special, is that your voice and your vote count. But before we can go forward, let's take a look back at these last few months. I think if there's one thing that we can agree on, it would be that 2020 has been a year, and it hasn't even been a full year yet.
That's
it's
all
crazy.
You have to say. Yeah. 2020 has been a year, especially because of the pandemic. You know, everything is just going to be different when it comes to elections this year. A lot of events and conventions were forced to move online, and less people are going door to door to sign petitions and campaign.
2020 has also changed how we vote and, of course, what we value. Now, if there's one positive, though, it's that through these last few months, we've been able to see our local and state leaders in action when it comes to both the pandemic and racial equality. And more people have come together calling on their communities to prioritize their civic duties, especially when it comes to hitting the polls.
Now, when it comes to actually getting people to the polls, one group is on the front lines, the millennials and Gen Zers.
Right. I spoke with a young activist with the Jacksonville Community Action Committee, and she says she grew up understanding her duty to vote. And she's seen firsthand how the crowds urging this change that we want to see are getting younger and younger, and that is promising.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom! It is our duty to fight for our freedom!
The voices of the future
It is our duty to win!
Are getting louder.
You have a responsibility to change things and change injustices.
And growing in number.
You have a responsibility to do your best in whatever's in your capacity.
It comes at a time that young activist Monique Sampson calls a turning point in America.
To fight against injustices, to fight against racism, to fight against police brutality.
Monique is a member of Generation Z, and back in 2016, she was finally eligible to cast her vote. She says it was that election's results that threw her into a world of activism, with one fist raised and a megaphone in the other.
I think a lot of people are kind of disillusioned with the voting process as is. So they're like, you know what, if things are going to continue to stay the same, I don't need to vote. I don't need to go out and waste my time and go vote.
But when you take a look at the numbers, here's why the young vote does matter. According to the Pew Research Center, in the general election in 2016, baby boomers accounted for 43% of eligible voters, and they cast 49% of the ballots. Now fast forward 3 years, in 2019, millennials outnumbered baby boomers for the first time. In the 2020 general election, 27% of eligible voters will be millennials, and 10% will be Gen Zers.
A lot of them are adults, so they're wanting to get more active and get more involved. They're super radical, super gun-ho of like, I want to do anything that I can in order to make this world a better place.
Whether that's arming yourself with the knowledge to vote,
research,
or hitting the streets. And if you're hesitant about exercising your right in November, Monique says think local first.
think of the judges, think of the women, congressmen. Think that way first. Young people are the future. We are powerful, we are incredible, and we're gonna be the generation that really shakes stuff up for sure.
I want to share this because I found this so interesting when I was talking with Monique. She said before the death of George Floyd, which sparked global outcry and called for major police reform, they would get about 10 or so applications a month to join the committee. But since then, applications have been pouring in by the hundreds, and that continues daily. And of course, ranging in ages too, which is awesome.
Right now, Monique is just one of many young voters here on the First Coast. And, you know, no matter what you believe in, no matter who you support, there is a committee or a group for you to get involved in. So whether you're on the left, you're on the right, or maybe right there in between, what you believe in is very important.
And as you know, the Florida primary is next Tuesday. So let's say you're not affiliated with a political party. That may be your mindset right now, right? Will you still be able to vote?
All right, well, that short answer is yes, but there are a lot of things that you probably won't see on your ballot. Here's why. Because Florida is a closed primary election state, meaning only voters who are registered members of political parties will be able to vote for respective party candidates or nominees like your state and district representatives.
So no, you will not be turned away from the polls if you're an independent voter. Duval County Supervisor of Elections Mike Hogan says every registered voter in the state can vote in nonpartisan races, which are your county judges, school board members, and any local referendums.
There's 683 styles of ballots. It means differences in ballots. It all depends on where you live.
Just think about that, so many. Now, because there's a growing amount of independent voters in the state, during the November election, there will actually be a referendum on the ballot to make Florida an open primary state.
Definitely pay attention to that when it's on your ballot. Now, the cool thing about voting is no matter what party, no matter if you vote in person or by mail, all votes count the same. But it's been a long, long road to get here. Ken Amaro has more.
Fundamental to our democracy, yet since 1960, the United States has only seen a voter turnout of more than 55% on 7 occasions. The other 45% do not participate. Many say, give me one reason.
It's unfortunate.
UNF political science professor Dr. Michael Bender says voter apathy undermines the foundation of our democracy.
My vote is no different than your vote, is no different than my neighbor's vote, and it's the same as the billionaire's vote up the street.
Consider these constitutional amendments that made it possible for you to cast a ballot. The 15th gave black men the right to vote. The 19th gave women the right to vote. The 24th got rid of poll taxes. The 26th lowered the voting age for all elections to 18. And then there's the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And behind these laws, bloodshed and lives lost in the process. Voting is a privilege and a duty, regardless of how you may feel about a candidate.
The problem is we're dealing with people, and no people are perfect.
By the way, if you don't like the candidate, you can become a candidate for office. We're now in the voting season, and your vote not only determines who is in office, but it may determine what share of your tax dollars is spent in your community.
This is something that is really ingrained in who we are as a society today.
Get out and vote. It's your voice. Let me frame the importance of your vote in these words from Dr. Martin Luther King. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter.
The ballot that you cast carries the exact same weight as everybody else.
Ken Amaro, First Coast News, on your side.
So step 1 is registering to vote or updating your voter registration. Now, it's a very easy and simple process. We would not steer you wrong, and it literally takes just 2 minutes.
Seriously, it literally takes 2 minutes, and we're going to actually walk you through the simple steps. So vote411.org is a nonpartisan organization where you can register, you can check your status, and find what's on your ballot. So here's how it works. You click register to vote. It will take you to the next page, and then it's going to ask for your name, if you're a citizen, your address, and the number on your Florida or Georgia ID. And just like that, you're registered to vote.
Just like that, you guys. 1, 2, 3. So let's go back to the home screen. Click check your voter registration status. This is going to allow you to see if you're a registered voter and check what party you're affiliated with. Click your state and then select a topic. Scroll on down to verify voter registration and click apply, and then you'll be able to verify your registration status.
Now, the deadline to register for the primary has already passed, but it's not too late for you to register for the general election. That deadline for both Florida and Georgia is October 5th.
Now, once you've registered, step 2 is knowing your polling location. You have to know where you're going. This address is on your voter ID card, and that you get in the mail, or you can find out through your local elections office. You can give them a call or just type in your address on their website.
So who can't forget, we're in the middle of a pandemic,
Yes.
right? And a lot of folks are probably wondering, is it even safe to go to the polls? Well, that's up for you to decide, but we can tell you that there are several safety precautions in place, like face masks. They're going to be required. You'll also have to use hand sanitizer, and everything touched by voters will be cleaned by poll workers.
I assure you that your polling location, your early voting site is likely to be the cleanest location you go to that day.
All right, but what about what's actually on your ballot? Well, it varies based on your county and your party affiliation, but hey, you don't have to work too hard to find that information. We have a county by county voter guide with everything you need to know, and all you have to do is text the word vote to 904-633-8808, and we'll get it right to your cell phone.
The connection between your life and voting is as intimate as any connection can be. So get fully woke, young folk. Start adulting, as you like to say. And I beg of you, vote.
Dr. Johnetta Cole, who you just heard from, grew up knowing the importance of the vote as the great-granddaughter of A.L. Lewis. He worked tirelessly to become the first black millionaire in the state of Florida.
Cole is among a group of women you're about to hear from who have a stern message to share, having a wealth of knowledge of the struggles of suffragists. As Keitha Nelson reports, these women persevered, leading us all to this year's celebration of the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote.
100 years. It's a celebration, but it's also a time to reflect on what has yet to be accomplished for women.
Before looking ahead, let's take a look back to the early 1900s in Jacksonville.
Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony made a plea to Catherine Eden. She said, you know, Florida is the only state in the Union that's failed to step up for women. This is 1902 when this is told to Catherine Eden. Florida needs to do something for the cause.
Countless Jacksonville women leaped into the fight, working for the passage of the 19th Amendment. Mary Mann Jennings, Helen Hunt, Mary Nolan.
She was 73 years old, a little gray-haired lady out of Springfield, a very unlikely candidate to walk the picket lines in Washington, D.C.
I'm sure there's a Susan B. Anthony in all of us.
Dressed in period garb outside of a polling site with a ballot in hand, for decades, Wanda Bosworth has encouraged and helped to register women to vote.
Women need to understand this is not something that we've always just had the opportunity to do.
An organized effort by suffragists began in 1848. In Seneca Falls, New York, they gathered for the first Women's Rights Convention, and for the next 72 years, protests, marches, arrests, and sheer force would lead to women being granted the right to the ballot.
Yes, Susan B. Anthony will be remembered. Yes, Elizabeth Cady Stanton will be remembered. But let us also remember Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Mary Church Terrell. Let us remember that there were African American women who once pushed outside of the suffragette movement, formed their own suffragette movement. Happy anniversary to all of us who are women folk and men folk. Now let's get to work. Now let's get to work.
That was Keitha Nelson reporting. By the way, Tuesday, August 18th marks the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, also known as women's suffrage.
And Tuesday, August 18th is also Florida's primary election day. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. This year, millions of convicted felons in Florida who've served their time were set to get their voting rights back.
But there's a new hurdle that could prevent hundreds of thousands of convicted felons from being able to even register. For the first time, critical battleground Florida has more than 1 million potential new voters, convicted felons, like 54-year-old Judy Bolden, who lost her voting rights after she was convicted for drug trafficking. Well, now she's free and she plans to vote for the very first time.
It made me feel worthless, like I wasn't even a citizen.
However, there's a new roadblock. Ex-felons must pay off any outstanding debts associated with their convictions before they can register to vote. The financial hurdle was not initially part of Amendment 4, the measure that passed 2 years ago, restoring voting rights to felons who complete all terms of their sentence, except for felons who committed murder or sexual battery. Governor Ron DeSantis says all terms means just that.
If you were robbed and someone's convicted of taking, $3,000 out of your house and they were ordered to pay you $3,000 of restitution and they didn't do it, did they complete the sentence?
In July, the U.S. Supreme Court sided with Governor Ron DeSantis, effectively preventing felons from voting in November unless they paid off what they owe. A coalition of civil rights groups said most convicted felons can't afford to pay off the remainder of their fines. And get this, what's more, the state is unable to tell them what they owe, so ex-convicts could possibly risk prosecution if they claim they're eligible, but actually they aren't.
Now, the next step is for the case to go before federal judges on August 18th, which is also Florida's primary day.
That's right. Well, something else that we've been seeing a lot of you talking about is voting by mail. And amid the pandemic, some feel this may be their safest option.
So we spoke with Duval County Supervisor of Elections, Mike Hogan, and let me just say, he tells it like it is, saying if you're going to vote by mail, you must follow instructions. First things first, be sure to use a black pen.
You're supposed to color in that oval. What we get are check marks, X's. They circle the name, they circle the party affiliation.
Now, this may seem obvious, but only fill in one bubble per race.
You can't vote for more than one candidate, so don't start circling in all the ovals. That race won't be counted.
And a ballot without a signature means absolutely nothing.
When you're voting by mail, your identification is your signature. So if you don't sign it, that ballot may not count.
Hogan says, don't just scribble a couple of letters and call that your signature.
If that's the way your normal signature looks like, you're going to be okay. But most of the time it's not. So make sure you sign it properly.
Now, let's say you and your spouse both want to vote by mail. Be sure to fill out your own ballot.
Just in every election, the husband will sign the wife's ballot and the wife will sign the husband's ballot. That's a mismatched signature. So we've got to deal with that.
Meaning those votes will not count. But hey, one last thing.
Make sure you put the ballot in before you mail that envelope back to us, because we get a lot of empty envelopes.
An empty envelope.
Yeah.
All right, so Hogan also mentions they pay for postage, so there's no need to add a stamp before sending it off. By the way, you should drop your ballot in the mail at least 3 days before the election to ensure they receive it on time.
All right, welcome back, guys. Well, it's no secret young people are some of the loudest voices that we're hearing today, and they're finding unique ways to reach the masses. And we all know that once it hits social media and goes viral, it becomes that clip that everyone is talking about. We came across Yellow Pain on YouTube. He's a rapper and an activist who's taking you to the classroom to teach you how your vote can work for you.
So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do. Okay, y'all? See, they election every 2 years.
Woo, Yellow Pain with the bars.
I just want to know where he was when I was in school, because that would have really
I know we needed something like that,
yeah.
right? But hey, we have to talk about our local talent,
Yeah.
right? We can't forget about our very own superstar whose song captured the world in today's racial climate.
I just wanna live. God protect me. Just stay right by my side. I just wanna live.
I saw you rocking. I did. That was 13-year-old Keitha Bryan, and you know what? He was on just about every network you can think of, and that song actually landed him a recording deal.
Amazing. Big things for Keitha ahead.
Wow. You know what, guys? At the end of the day, the only way for you to be heard is for you to use your voice. And when you vote, that's when the nation hears you loud and clear.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you next time.
You've been watching a First Coast News special presentation, Voice to Vote, sponsored by Farah and Farah.